My name is Claire. I'm 38 years old, and I feel like I've been living a double life. Except the second life is just the hollow echo of the first. I've been married to Daniel for 15 years. To the outside world, we're the couple people point to and say, that's what I want someday. The house, the vacations, the photos where we're wrapped around each other like we're still 20. But what they don't see are the quiet, almost invisible cracks. What they don't see is how easy it is to lose yourself when you've spent years convincing everyone else that you're happy. When we first met, I thought I'd been struck by lightning. He had this boyish grin, this magnetic energy that made me feel like I was the only woman in the room. I remember our first kiss, messy, desperate, unforgettable. He pressed me against his car, and the whole world seemed to disappear. Back then, everything between us was fire. Even the way he looked at me across a crowded space. It was like a promise, one he was itching to keep. For years, I believed in that fire. We moved in together. We made love on floors and kitchen counters. We fought and made up with the kind of passion that made the walls shake. He used to write me little notes, leave them in the pocket of my coat or under my pillow. You're mine. I can't stop thinking about you. Sometimes, I still find one tucked inside a book I haven't touched in years, and for a moment I remember what it felt like to be chosen over and over again. But marriage has this way of smoothing out the edges, doesn't it? What was once thrilling becomes routine. The things you used to crave, his hand on your lower back, the way he whispered your name against your neck, turn into something expected, then obligatory. I can't pinpoint when it shifted, only that one day I realized I couldn't feel the burn anymore. It started with small things, a kiss at the door that felt perfunctory, like clocking in for work. A hug where his arms were there, but his chest wasn't, his body leaning away even as he held me close. Cuddling on the couch where I ended up staring at the TV while he scrolled on his phone, his fingers brushing mine, but not holding on. The intimacy remained in gestures, but the warmth was gone, like a candle that flickers but won't catch. I used to think it was me, that maybe I wasn't attractive enough anymore, or that motherhood had dulled something in me he used to crave. I tried harder. New lingerie, spontaneous kisses, dinners where I lit candles just to make Tuesday feel like Friday. He smiled. He said thank you. He touched me. But it felt like compliance, not desire. Like I was asking him to play a role he no longer remembered how to love. There were nights I would curl into his chest, searching for that safe place where I once felt I belonged. He would drape an arm over me, heavy, familiar, but his breathing was already steady, his mind already gone. I'd lie awake, wide-eyed in the dark, listening to the rhythm of his sleep and wondering if maybe he was already gone in ways I couldn't see. And then came the moment I can't stop replaying in my mind. It wasn't dramatic, not like in movies. There was no fight, no slammed doors, no shattering revelation. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind where nothing should matter. He was leaving for work, coffee in hand, tie askew. I kissed him at the door, like always. Except this time, his lips barely touched mine. Cool, distracted, already somewhere else. He pulled away before I did, gave me that small absent smile, and walked out. I stood there, fingers brushing my lips, and felt a hollow echo where his warmth should have lingered. That was when I knew something had changed. Something in us had shifted so subtly, so completely, that I couldn't remember the last time he kissed me like he actually wanted me. And the most terrifying part? I couldn't remember the last time I kissed him like I still wanted him, but it's strange how once you notice something is wrong, the evidence starts piling up everywhere, even in places you'd never thought to look. After that morning, the kiss that wasn't a kiss, I started replaying little moments in my head. The late nights at work, the texts he answered in another room, the way he'd put his phone face down on the counter as though the screen was a secret. For 15 years, I never doubted Daniel's loyalty. I doubted myself. I doubted our choices sometimes, but not him. He was steady, predictable in a way that made me feel safe. But once that seed of suspicion was planted, safety turned into something else entirely. It was like living with a stranger I was supposed to already know. I remember one evening, maybe a week later. He came home late again, loosened his tie, kissed me on the forehead. I caught the faint scent of perfume that wasn't mine. Not floral like I wear, something sharper, muskier. I froze, and when I asked him how work was, his answer was clipped, like a door slamming shut. Busy, he said, already walking toward the shower. I wanted to follow him, to demand the truth, but instead I found myself at the kitchen table, staring at the half-finished glass of wine I'd poured hours earlier. My chest felt tight, like my body already knew what my mind refused to admit. Still, I told myself stories. Maybe it was someone's perfume from the office elevator. Maybe the tension in his voice was exhaustion, not guilt. That night, when he slid into bed beside me, I shifted closer, trying to bridge the widening distance. He let me rest my head on his chest, but his heartbeat felt frantic, uneven. His hand stroked my arm absent-mindedly, but his eyes stayed fixed on the ceiling. When I whispered, "I miss us," his silence was the kind that burns. Eventually, he kissed the top of my head, a gesture that felt more like a benediction than a promise. I cried quietly into his shirt until I fell asleep. In the weeks that followed, I started keeping track. Every late meeting, every unexplained receipt, every time he smiled at his phone instead of me. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't stop. The betrayal wasn't in the proof. It was in the suspicion itself, in realizing I no longer trusted the man I'd built my life with. But the cruelest part wasn't even the suspicion. It was how much I still wanted him. The disconnect between my body and my mind was excruciating. I'd catch myself watching him as he dressed in the morning, the way his shirt stretched across his back, the way his jaw clenched when he concentrated. Desire would flare in me, but it was tangled with resentment, and I couldn't untangle the two. One night, I decided to test him, or maybe test myself. I put on a silk slip I hadn't worn in years, lit candles in the bedroom like I used to. He came in, saw me sitting on the edge of the bed, and his face flickered with something I couldn't read. He crossed the room, kissed me deeply, and for a moment it felt real. I clung to him, desperate, trying to ignite the spark we'd lost. But midway through, his touch faltered, his eyes clouded, and it was as if he'd left the room even while he was still inside me. Afterward, he rolled away, muttering about being tired. I lay there staring at the ceiling, the candles still burning, the scent of wax thick in the air. My body ached with longing, but my heart ached more, with the certainty that I was no longer enough for him. That was when the anger began to replace the sadness. I wasn't just hurt, I was furious. Furious that I had given him 15 years of loyalty, children, my youth, my trust, and he couldn't even look me in the eye without shadows lurking there. Furious that I had begged for crumbs of affection when I once had the whole feast. And beneath the fury, a darker thought whispered, if he is betraying me, what am I supposed to do? Because part of me wasn't afraid of losing him. Part of me was afraid of what I might do when the truth finally came out that I used to think discovery would come like an explosion, some dramatic confession or a slip of the tongue that shattered everything at once. But in reality, the truth seeped in quietly, like water under a door, slowly flooding the room until you realize you're already drowning. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. I was folding laundry in the bedroom, one of those endless domestic tasks that feels both mindless and grounding. Daniel was in the shower, his phone buzzing on the nightstand. Normally, I never touched his phone. I believed in trust, in privacy. But that day, something inside me shifted. The buzzing wouldn't stop, and my hands moved before my mind caught up. I picked it up. The name on the screen wasn't one I recognized, just Lena. No last name. A message preview glowed. Last night was perfect. I can still feel you. The room tilted. My ears rang so loudly I thought I might faint. I unlocked the phone with the code I'd seen him type 100 times. And then the flood came. There they were. Dozens of messages. Weeks of them. Photos. Words I hadn't heard in years. I can't wait to taste you again. You make me feel alive. The kind of passion he no longer gave me. The kind of hunger I'd been starving for. Except it wasn't gone. It was just redirected. My hands shook as I scrolled, while rising in my throat. He hadn't just cheated once. He had been weaving this second life right alongside ours, day after day, kiss after kiss, as if our marriage was nothing more than a stage prop. And worse, Lena knew everything about me. She knew when he was stuck at work, when I was out with friends, even what I'd cooked for dinner some nights. It was the intimacy that broke me, not the sex. The fact that he gave her the little details, the small observations, the private language that used to belong to me. When he came out of the shower, towel slung low on his hips, humming like the world was untouched, I could barely look at him. My chest felt like it might split open. His phone was still in my hand. Whose? Lena. I asked, my voice trembling raw. For a second, his face froze. Then came the look, guilt, panic, calculation. He reached for the phone, but I pulled it back, clutching it to my chest like a weapon. Don't, I said. My voice surprised me, sharp and cold. Don't you dare. He stammered something about a coworker, about a joke taken out of context. But I had the receipts, literally. I scrolled, held up the screen, forced him to see his own words staring back at him. His face drained of color. Claire, he whispered, as if my name alone could undo the damage. I never meant for you to. Never meant for me to what? I snapped. To find out? To realize I've been sleeping next to a liar for God knows how long. He reached for me then, but I stepped back. The distance between us had never felt wider. My body shook with rage, but beneath it was something even worse, grief. Grief for the 15 years I thought I knew him. Grief for the girl who once believed she was the love of his life. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to break the mirror just to watch something else shatter the way I felt inside. Instead, I sank onto the bed, phone clutched in my hands, tears streaming down my face. He sat across from me, head in his hands, muttering apologies that sounded hollow, rehearsed. It didn't mean anything, he said. It's just, I don't know. I felt trapped. It didn't mean anything? My voice cracked. Then why does it sound like you gave her everything I've been begging for? Silence hung heavy. And in that silence, I realized something that terrified me. I wasn't shocked he cheated. Deep down, I'd known. What gutted me was how long he'd been willing to let me wither while he bloomed elsewhere. That night, he slept on the couch. I lay awake in our bed, staring at the ceiling, my body aching for his presence even as my heart recoiled. I wanted him and hated him all at once. I wanted to curl into the familiar space of his arms, but I knew if I did, it would feel like surrender. The moment of discovery didn't end with answers. It ended with a question echoing in my chest. If he could betray me for 15 years without me noticing, who was I really married to? And maybe even worse, who had I become, not noticing it all? Revenge was never something I pictured myself capable of. I was the peacekeeper, the one who smoothed over arguments, who forgave first and cried later. But after that night, after discovering the full weight of his betrayal, something inside me hardened. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was fury, sharp and precise, like a blade I finally knew how to hold. For days, I watched him unravel in small ways. Daniel tried the usual tactics: flowers, long apologies, promises whispered like fragile threads. I'll do anything, Claire, he said, kneeling beside me as if devotion could be relearned like a habit. I didn't scream. I didn't throw him out. I simply nodded, smiled tightly, and let him believe he was repairing what he'd shattered. That was my first taste of revenge, silence. Silence that left him guessing, sweating, begging for signals. But inside, I was plotting. I started paying attention to things I'd ignored before. His passwords, his work schedule, his credit card statements. The secrecy that had once been his advantage became mine. Every little detail I uncovered wasn't just evidence. It was ammunition. There was a part of me that wanted to burn it all down in one dramatic confrontation. Call Lena, show up at her job, expose him in front of everyone. But that wasn't the revenge I craved. I didn't want an explosion. I wanted erosion. I wanted him to feel what I had felt. The slow drip of betrayal. The quiet suffocation of not knowing when the next wound would appear. I began small. I withdrew pieces of myself, carefully, surgically. No more reaching for his hand. No more initiating kisses. I still cooked dinner, but I stopped seasoning it the way he liked. I still washed his clothes, but